A colleague of mine, this was his entire life, was dealing with AQ Khan. Well, if we had taken, the Israeli approach, we would have just killed him. He was easy enough to find. We knew where he lived. We knew how he spent his day. But he also had the support of the Saudi government. And the Saudis came to us and said, please leave him alone. Please. We like AQ Khan. We're working with AQ Khan. We're close to the Pakistanis. They even named Faisalabad after King Faisal. Just leave him alone. This was a mistake that the US government made, not confronting AQ Khan head on. And I'll add too, later on, when I went to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee staff as the chief investigator, I worked for a man who was a journalist before going to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee staff. And he and his wife wrote a book that was first titled The Man from Pakistan. And the title was changed in the paperback version to The Nuclear Jihadist. It was the most detailed book ever written about AQ Khan. And they asked more than 24 CIA officers and United Nations IAEA officials exactly the same question that you just asked me. I was surprised that they got so many people to speak with them freely and openly. But they all told the same thing. They said that there were instructions from the White House not to attack AQ Khan. And it had to be because the Saudis were demanding it, insisting on it. We often wondered, and I have no proof, this is just my own speculation. We often wondered if it was because the Saudis were also building a nuclear capability. Yeah, I think that's something we should probably be thinking about.
Well, when you put this into context and you talk about the Saudi-Pakistan Mutual Defense Pact that was just signed a few months ago.
Yes.
Is Saudi Arabia basically calling in its investment?
I think yes. But I have to laugh about this Mutual Defense Pact. I don't know if you've ever spent any time in Saudi Arabia, but
No,
almost the entire Saudi military is Pakistanis. No Saudi is going to join the military unless they're going to make him a general. There are a lot of Bedouins in the Saudi military, but you go straight in as an officer. If you're a Saudi citizen, you're going to start as an officer. There are no privates or corporals who are Saudi. They're all Pakistani, all of them. It's the Pakistanis that protect Saudi Arabia.
But how realistic is
on the ground?
But how realistic is a nuclear umbrella, though? That's what is, at least some of the doomsayers in India think of it like that.
Yeah, I don't think it is realistic.
Yeah.
No,
so
I don't think it's realistic.
When this AQ Khan thing happened and it was brought up, what was this Saudi Arabia hold on America? Now you have Saudi terrorists taking out the 9/11 towers.
That's right.
Saudi Arabia actively lobbying to protect one of the most dangerous men, at least in the last quarter century, at least in this region. And then eventually Pervez Musharraf also pardoning AQ Khan, therefore ending all investigations. What is this compulsion that America has with dictators and this love story?
That is one of the most difficult questions that you could ask. We like to try to convince the world that we are a shining beacon of hope for democracy and human rights and equality, and it's just simply not true. Our foreign relations, our foreign relations are based on our national needs at any given moment. We don't do things because they're the right thing to do. We do them because they happen to be good for us that day, which is why we get into bed with so many dictators around the world, which is why we get into bed with so many politicians who are so extreme in their personal politics that it makes no sense to the American people. Why are we in bed with Benjamin Netanyahu right now
Right.
when
Right.
we've known Netanyahu since the 1980s as an
Yes.
extremist?
Yes.
Because it's the easy thing to do and it serves our purposes, today. That may change tomorrow, but today it's okay. I worked for an ambassador in Bahrain who was an absolutely lovely man. And he said one day, I still remember this. I was young and impressionable, and he said, our foreign policy in Saudi Arabia really is as simple as we buy their oil and they buy our weapons.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. That's the basis. He said, you spend your career in the Middle East. I've spent my entire adult life in the Middle East. He said, I don't like the Saudis. They don't like us. But we pretend to have this special relationship, right? Even in the American embassy, my first overseas tour was in Saudi Arabia. And I
Mm.
remember an enormous photograph. It had to be 2 meters across. And it was President Franklin Roosevelt and King Abdulaziz ibn Saud, the founder of Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
in the back of a car together. And this was supposed to be emblematic of our special relationship with the Saudis. But when I first arrived in Saudi Arabia, um, I was placed in embassy housing. So I was living in an apartment in the diplomatic quarter, and I would walk a block or two to the embassy and go in the back entrance of the embassy. And every day, my first 3 days, I would say to this Saudi guard, national Saudi Arabia National Guard officer standing there, Salamu alaikum. The
Well,
response, of course, is Walaikum assalam.
yes.
He would ignore me. So the next day I went in and I said, Salaam alaikum.
Mm.
And he ignored me. The third day I went in and I said, Sabah al khair wa assalamu alaikum. Good morning
Right.
and peace be upon you. He ignored me. And I stopped and I said to him, what's your problem? And he said to me in English, he said, you are hired help. We paid for you to come here and defend us. We are not friends.
Mm.
And I said, you know what? You're right. We aren't friends. I don't like you, and I don't like any of your compatriots. None of them.
Right.
And then I never spoke to him again. But that was the US Saudi relationship in a nutshell.
Do you think Saudi Arabia knows this now? Because with this mutual defense pact, again, I keep coming back to the nuclear thing and them sort of, basically seeking nuclear deterrence with the help of Pakistan. Then it appears with this Trump regime that a certain amount of American retrenchment has happened in the
Yeah.
region, where it's
Yeah.
almost like a hemispheric defense now that America is focusing on. So Saudi Arabia always had the US for its back. Now that US is not, at least it appears that it's not highly dependent on Saudi oil, Saudi energy. Do you think Saudi Arabia is doing this as an insurance pact?
Absolutely, yes. And it's not just Saudi Arabia, it's Kuwait as well. Kuwait last year made a purchase of, not made a purchase, made a sale of oil to China, and for the very first time ever, took payment in yuan.
Hmm.
Yeah. First time ever that payment was not in dollars. So I think everybody is coming around to the notion that here in the United States, we're sitting on an ocean of oil. Okay, we have shale oil enough to last us 500 years. We don't need Middle Eastern oil. We buy it because it's good for relations,
Yes.
because we buy it and then they buy our weapon systems.
Right.
So we continue to do that. But when push comes to shove, we don't need the Saudis anymore.
And
We
that's good.
don't. And so they're hedging their bets. They're
Yeah.
they're improving their relations with China. They're
Mhm.
improving their relations with India, which is a huge market and in need of oil.
Yes.
And if the Indians are going to have problems, especially from the United States, buying Russian oil or Russian natural gas, they should just buy it from Saudi Arabia. It makes it even easier.
Right. Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
think we're
Yeah.
seeing a transformation here in the way the
A
world
very
operates.
dynamic geopolitical shift is being viewed here. That's why conversations like
Agreed.
with you, someone in the field and who has historical context, I mean, it's fantastic.